All right, so I welcome everyone to today's class. Still talking about CSS. So we just get started. In our previous class, of course, we still talked about different kinds of CSS selectors, element selector, ID, class, universal attributes, CSS group selectors, talked about child selectors, and of course, we went further to talk about specificity, determining the order of priority for styles application. We mentioned that inline styling has the highest priority, followed by IDs, followed by classes, pseudo classes, and attributes. And of course, let me zoom in a little bit. Okay, so of course we had the last one being elements, pseudo elements, and we did demonstrate what classes are. That's pseudo class, right? What pseudo classes are. We demonstrated what pseudo elements are. Okay, so all right, so demonstrated what pseudo elements are, and of course we talked about the different types of styling, inline styling within the style tag, like styling with the style tag within the head tag, and styling using an external style sheets, right? So today, we'll just talk about styling using an external style sheet. Then every other thing we want to do around styling will follow in that external style sheet, right? So that's where we are. All right, so to style with an external style sheet, of course, you need to come to your project, create a style sheet. So I could call it styles.css, right? Okay, so with this, your code would not just work automatically just because you've created it. Of course, you need to link your CSS style sheets with your HTML. And the HTML we are working with is index2.html. So we just come to the head tag, still within the head tag, right? And we'll create link. So we use the link tag, right? Link is self-closing. So rel. So rel really has to do with relationship. So the relationship is that it is a style sheet, style sheets, right? So we have href, that's the hyperlink reference, and we have dots / then we have styles.css, right? So if you already have a styling, right? That's every of your style within your style tag. So what we want to do is, so that we'll not have conflict, right? We just want to comment out the current styles that we have, or better still, we can delete them. Yeah, we can delete them. Yeah, so we have them in our other videos, right? So you could always check back to other videos for this style. So, but at this moment, we are going to delete this style so that we'll see the impact of the external styling, right? So let's comment it. Do we comment it? Okay, so I've just commented it so that it will not impact the current styles that we have. So just to be sure that that's has been shown in our display, let's just go to our, okay, so this is actually opening from live server, and Okay, so this is what we see. All right, so I just want to be sure that I've completely detached these styles from what you currently have. So I could, okay, so I think better still, what I would do, let me just, better still, what I would do is, let me take out this link. Let me use a new HTML file to do this demonstration. So I think that would be fine. So let's say index3.html, right? So I think that's going to make more sense for us. And remember to get your default HTML document structure. You can type HTML followed by colon, then 5, and press enter, right? So, so under the title, we can say testing with external style sheets, right? External style sheets. So that could be the title. And in our body, let's just have maybe a paragraph and call it my first paragraph, right? Okay. So within the head tag, remember, that's where we actually bring in our external external style sheets using the link tag, right? So rel, which is an attribute, that's like relationship. So the relationship is style sheets. Style sheets. Then after that, we have href, that's hyperlink reference. So that href actually gives you the opportunity to target the style sheets. So immediately you type dot and /, you are going to see the files, including folders, if there are, that will show up on your VS Code. So from there, you can just easily choose styles.css. So let's go to our styles.css and just try something just for us to be sure it's working. Okay, so let's use our universal selector, which we talked about in our last class. The universal selector actually, you know, is used to style everything. You can use that to set the fonts, default fonts, default font size, right, for every of your text that you have not, you know, that you are not going to define later. You just want to set your default, even your background color. It may be your background color for your entire web page. You can set it by default using the universal, or you use body tag. I did mention that, so you can equally use body tag, right? So just to take note of that. So for our universal selector, we actually want to say, so let's say background color, so let's say gold. Let's use gold, gold. Okay, it's just, okay, so it's not, so yeah, so for us to see, we'll go to index3.html and we're actually going to open with live server. Right. So let me close this. This was the last class. Let me close it. Right. Okay, so this is where we are. My first paragraph and the background color is gold. So that actually works using the link tag, right? Link, rel, which is an attribute, that's relationship, is a style sheet, of course. href, that's the hyperlink reference, and we now have our style sheets or styles.css. All right, so this is actually the third form of styling. Okay, so let's go ahead from where we stopped yesterday. So yesterday we equally talked about, or in our previous class, right, we actually talked about box model. Just to explain box model once again for us, just as a refresher. So let me inspect. I'm actually going to use what is here. So if we do Control+, it's going to zoom in. All right, so I think we are here. Okay. So just to remind you that this is the content for every element or every layout, everything you see on your web page, right? It actually has this phenomenon. This is more like the general phenomenon for the layout for every content, right? Or for every element that you have on your web page. There is a content padding if you apply any form of padding. So by default, if it is just a content, then it's really it's just the content. If you don't add any padding, then that's just the content. If you don't add any border, then what you are just going to have is only the content. If you don't add any margin, there's actually going to be just the content. However, if you now in your HTML code, you have a content, then in your styles, right, you add a padding, right? Padding is just the space around the content, as you can see, more like in a rectangular shape, right? So it's more like space around the content, right? Then border is actually not really a space. I wouldn't call it a space because you can make it solid, you can make it dotted, you can make it dashed. So border is just that thick line, yeah, the thick line beyond your border. Sorry, beyond your padding, right? That's what border is. That thick line. It can actually be thin, right? So it depends on the pixels that you give to your border. So, but it's just that border line, so to speak, beyond your padding. Then after the border, you actually have a margin. That's if you add margin to your page or to your element, right? That margin is actually the distance or more like space around the content after the border. Beyond the border is actually the margin. So, but this also does not mean that for every content you need to add padding before you add border, before you add margin. That's not the meaning. So if you have a content like this, you can just decide to add a border to it, right? Just border and you go your way. It depends on, the use case or business case or what the client requires, right? So that's really it. So it's not that it's a graduation that you must always put padding before you put border, and that you must put border before margin. So what it's just showing you that these are layers, that at any point in time you have a content and you have a margin. If you have just content and margin, then it means there's no padding, it means there's no border, right? So it just means that after the content is margin. So there's no border and there's no padding. Okay, just to demonstrate. So let me see. Let me give this P an ID so that we'll use that to style. ID of paragraph. Let us say paragraph, right? So we can go to our styles of CSS and say is an ID. So we use an hash, curly brace, enter. We want to just add margin, right? So just to show you that you don't need to add padding before you add border, before you add margins. It really depends on what you are doing, right? So, but whatever styling you give to your element is what it is. For example, if you give margin is actually the space around. So let's say margin of, let's say 20 pixels, right? So, yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't put the name of the ID or the value. So we have paragraph. All right. So we have a margin of 20. So as you can see here, my first paragraph. So if we click on this and come to this place, if we put our cursor over here, so what do you see? You see color, you would see a font, you will see background, you will see margin 20 pixels. So as you can see, there is nothing like border here, right? And there's nothing like padding. So your margin will still work, right? Is essentially the space around more like the outermost, if you want to use that word, the outermost space around your content. So you can just use a margin directly. All right. Okay, so Paul is asking, he said, what criteria should we use to decide which of them to use, padding, border? So, like I said, there's no criteria, right? It's just what you want. And for you to also understand the impact. So, for example, let's say I wanted to create a space around this paragraph, right? Then I said margin. Okay, so let me stop inspecting. So this is let's remove the margin and just to show you. So this is my element by default. This is my paragraph, and this is what it is, right? So what I want to do is, I don't like the way it is. It's too close to my left, right? To my top left, and more like I want to shift it a bit inside. So there are a couple of things. You can decide to use margin. You can decide to use padding to shift it. But it's just for you to understand the effects, what padding does and what margin does. So like I said, padding is going to add to the width. Padding will add to the width of your element. Margin will not. Margin will just give a space around it. So as it is, my first paragraph, so I can just say margin 20 pixels, right? I can say margin 20 pixels, and you see this is what essentially happens. It has shifted. So if I don't want to add a margin, but I still want to achieve a space around it, so I can say padding 20 pixels. So let's check it out. So you can see it's still going to give me space from the left, 20 pixels. It will shift the element 20 pixels from where it was before, right? So, but just to understand that the effect of padding is different from the effect of margin. It's still going to give you a space round, right? But what happens is that padding will add to the width, or if you can say to the dimension. So it's going to add to the width, or it adds to the height, depending on whether you use padding top, padding bottom, or padding left, padding right. It really depends on what you used at that point, right? So let me just demonstrate that. Yeah. So we have padding. So remember when I said padding 20 pixels, what it does is that it's going to give it a space around this paragraph, 20 pixels to the left, 20 pixels to the top, 20 pixels to the right, 20 pixels to the bottom, right? So immediately you say padding 20 pixels, it distributes 20 pixels of space around it. So however, there are things like, or there are still other stylings like padding. If you want to be more specific, maybe you don't want to give something round and you just want to say, so looking at this, our element, right, the way it appears, what we just want to achieve is to give it a left, just to shift it from the left, the edge, right? That's just what we want to do essentially. We don't want to also shift it to the right. You don't want to shift it from the top. We just want to shift it from the left. So what we can just do is just to say padding left, right? So padding left, and we say 20 pixels. So it shifts. But at this point, there's nothing like padding top, there's nothing like padding right, there's nothing like padding bottom. So let's inspect, right? Let's inspect. Okay, so if we put our cursor, let's click on this. So if we put our cursor here, so you can even see padding, margin is 16 pixels, 0 pixels. Padding is 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 20. So this 20 essentially is for the left, right? Left. Okay. Every other one, like the top, bottom, right, 0 pixels each. So let me still show you. So you can have padding right if you like, just to show you that there are different ways you can style using your padding style. So padding right, you can say maybe 30 pixels. So because of the way, let me stop inspecting. So because of the way this element is, right, it has so much space to the right. So when you give it a padding of 30 pixels, you may not really see the effect because it already has a large space to your far right. And now you are giving padding right of 30 pixels. So you're not really going to see the effect, right? But if you inspect this element, you're actually going to see that 30 pixels of padding has been applied to it. So let's inspect. Okay, so let's click on this. All right, so focusing there, you're going to see, let's see, okay. Yeah, so you can see 0 pixels, 30 pixels, 0 pixels, 20 pixels, showing you that you have 30 pixels of padding to the right, you have 20 pixels of padding to the left, actually. Okay, so but another way just for you to still see, let's create a box around this our paragraph so that it makes more sense. Let's create a box. Let's say div, right? Div, and after your P here, so let's shift this one a little bit inside just to show that this is actually a child, you know. Let's close our div here. All right. So this is like a parent. This is a parent to this paragraph here. So here, let's give it an ID because we want to style it. We want to just make a box around it so that we are going to see the effect of what we are doing. So let's say ID of maybe paragraph box. Maybe we want to call it paragraph box, right? So let's copy that paragraph box. Right, go to our styles.css and let's drop it there to say so that's an ID, so it's gonna be an hash. Drop it there, open your curly brace. Right, so I think let me see. All right, so yeah, so will it be idle to centralize a paragraph? Will it be idle to centralize a paragraph with padding or margin? I'm really trying to understand this question. Will it be idle to centralize a paragraph with padding or margin? It's padding. What padding and margin does, basically, is just to create space around an element. So it actually depends on what you want, right? It depends on what you are doing. But I think let me just give this illustration. I believe with this illustration, I might talk about what you are asking. So let's give it a width, maybe a width of maybe 150 pixels, and let's give it a height of still okay. Let's not make it 150. Let's say so let's say 100 pixels, and let's give it. I think we'll just give a background color. I don't want to give a border to it. Let's give a background color so that it will stand out a bit. Aquamarine. Let's see how that looks. Okay. All right. So we have that box. Okay. So we have, let me see, our box. Let's check. So this is actually a parent to this paragraph, right? So but why do we have our paragraph outside? Okay, so let's take out the stylings for the paragraph first. Let's comment them out first and see. Okay. So let's check out. Let me see. Okay, so just to add, right? Because sometimes you want to troubleshoot, you know, you want to troubleshoot to say, why is this not working? Because normally what I expect is that this is a box, right? Where I have aquamarine color is a box. I'm actually expected to see my first paragraph inside this box, but it's not inside, right? And you are trying to figure out, so why is it not inside? So one of the ways you can troubleshoot, because in the course of your coding, right, you actually come across stuffs like this where you have issues and you're like, so why is this not showing? I'm adding space, the element is not shifting. Why? So one of the ways you can troubleshoot like now is that you can click here, right? So when you click here, you can actually click on the element itself, right? So when you click, you come to the right hand side. You're actually going to see the stylings, right, show forth. So from here you can you can play around, right? If you like, you can say you can disable this background color. So do you see we've disabled the background color? And as you can see, by disabling the background color, our text has come into our box, which is what we expected, right? So this is just the troubleshooting part of it, because if you don't know this, it's good to know this at the earlier parts where you're just learning CSS. It helps for quick development or quick troubleshooting, right? So these are things I learned many years after I had learned CSS, right? I didn't know this troubleshooting part. So sometimes I will struggle, right? I'm going to, like I did this here. I expected the paragraph to be inside the box, but the paragraph was not inside the box. And I was wondering, why is it not inside the box? So you just come here, you inspect, you click on the element here, then the stylings will show to your right. Then you can disable, right? So like, let me click on it again. Do you see? So with that styling comes, you see? So the element is actually inside the box. But what happens is that the background color of the paragraph, just the content around, the area around the paragraph, still also takes up the background color also, as you can see, right? So yeah, so the element is actually within the box, but with this background color, it didn't allow us to essentially see what is wrong. So now that we've disabled and enabled, we are actually able to see, right? So inside here, you can still do your coding. You can code here just to test. So you have background color of gold. You can come here, just click here, and you type your styles here, right? So let's say padding. You can just say padding. Maybe you don't want to be shortly between your code at this point. You don't want to be going to your code and coming here. You just want to test out to say, okay, if I do this, what will happen? So this is just a place where you can just quickly do something. So padding, okay, so let's click on it again. So padding, ing, I think you enter, yeah. So when you click enter, it goes to the other side where you add a value. So here you can just say maybe 24 pixels, right? And as you are typing, you just see the element is actually going to respond to the styling, right? So just to let you know that this is very helpful, very, very helpful. If you are learning to code, you can troubleshoot your HTML, you can troubleshoot your CSS, you can even troubleshoot your JavaScript. When we go into JavaScript, I'll also show you how to troubleshoot, because I can assure you these things are very important. And if you do not know how to troubleshoot, then you would waste so much time in your code, especially when you get stuck. Okay, so So padding 24 pixels, but mind you that anything you type here as a style is actually not going to show in your code, right? So if you reload this page, it will actually go away. If you reload this page, that padding of 24 pixels, okay, let's click enter. Okay, so it has applied, right? Padding 24 pixels, but if we reload this page, so do you see, when we reload this page, that padding goes away. So it's just a temporary, styling, um, avenue, right? Yeah, where you can just do your testing. Okay, so we've been able to troubleshoot and we know where the problem is coming from. So the problem is coming from this background color of gold. So we can disable background color, make it white. All right, so let's go. Yeah, so here is it. So it's actually within the box. All right, so, okay, I have some questions here. Let me see. So I'm having trouble with my devices. Yeah. All right. Great. Yeah, Emma, great. So when you get your devices set up, you could always follow us. Thanks. All right. Okay, so I have this and I wanted to demonstrate. I wanted to demonstrate padding. Yeah. So padding. Yeah. So let's go. Let's delete all of this. So padding, right? So padding. So this is a small box because this is actually where you are going to see, let's say, padding of maybe 50 pixels. So when you say padding 50 pixels, you're giving it 50 pixels of space around the content. So you can see how it looks like. So because the width of the content is fixed, it's not moving. So you see that the content is going to get distorted, right? So, but this is what you can see, that padding has been applied to the left, to this place. Padding has been applied from the top up to this place, then to the right, then bottom. Yeah. If you inspect this element, you are going to see that there's actually padding bottom. So these are the things to watch out for because, okay, so let me show you something. Index3.html. So after this div, right? So let's say we want to add maybe another paragraph, or let's say a heading, maybe heading 3, for example. And we want to say this is a heading, right? So check out something. So can you see where the heading started from? So because normally if you've forgotten that although this text is the way it is, it still has a 50 pixels of padding below it. There's actually space between this word, the last word, paragraph, and this is a heading, right? There's space here, essentially. So let's inspect. So do you see, putting my cursor on that, uh, my first paragraph? Okay, so let's do that again. So you would see padding 50 pixels. So there's a 50 pixel space, right? There's a 50 pixel space around that paragraph. And you can actually see the true widths, right? So we have 150 p hash paragraph. You can see we have 150 by 154, right? And there's a space in between. So if you put your cursor on this is a heading, you're actually also going to see this space it occupies. So this is actually important. And from there, you can see that there's no padding to it. There's no margin to it, it's just there because we've not added margin, we've not added padding, but there's actually space between my first paragraph and this is a heading. So let me just replicate that. I just want to confirm something. Let me see something. All right, so this is a second heading. Okay, so yeah, there's something I wanted to confirm. So what I wanted to confirm was the padding. What happens to the padding bottom? right? So because we've given the container, this is the parent, we've given it a width and height. So what happens is that the padding bottom, although you can see it, if you inspect it, you are going to see 50 pixels. But you are going to see also that it does not exceed, because that 50 pixels will make it to exceed the dimensions of the container. So because of that, the container restricts the other 50 pixels bottom from showing. So the space between here, between this paragraph, this last word, and this is a heading, right, is actually a normal space that exists. That's why I had to bring in a second heading for us to see. Because on this first heading, there are no dimensions. We didn't give a width, we didn't give a height, we didn't give a padding, we didn't give margin, nothing. So I now brought in the next text, which is this is a second heading. And you can see by default, the space between this is a heading and this is a second heading is it looks the same compared to the space between this last word, paragraph, and this is a heading. So just to clarify that because of the dimensions of this box, which is the parent element, the padding bottom could not show up, right? The excess of the padding bottom could not show up. But I think if I give something like overflow, let me just see something. Let me just say overflow. Let me try that overflow. So let's just see overflow. So if we give it an overflow of what axis now? Y. That's Y axis. So if we say auto, let's see. Okay. So overflow actually, what overflow property does is overflow is actually going to allow you to reveal, it's going to allow you to scroll, right? If you want to scroll, there are a lot of options around that overflow, but overflow just, it accounts for anything that is beyond its parent element. That's really what overflow does, because at this point, it has given us the opportunity to scroll, right? So we're able to scroll up and scroll down so that that 50 pixels that we added, essentially, you're actually going to see it. And so at this moment, you can see 50 pixels from the left to where the paragraph starts, but from here to where the box ends, you really can't see it. So if you like, what you can do is to still give an overflow. So you can give an overflow in the Y, in the x-axis, overflow in the x-axis, and you can set it to auto. Okay, so if there's an overflow, it's actually going to account for that. Okay, so it didn't seem to get an overflow here. So let me see. Let me try scroll. Let's see. Okay, so that still didn't show up. All right, so if we restrict the width, to say maybe 100 pixels, let's say 100 pixels, or let's say 80, 80 pixels. Okay, so okay, so that it is at this point that that scroll works, because essentially you still have abundance of space to the left and to the right of the element. So you can actually scroll to the left, you can actually scroll to the right. Okay, so yeah, so let's take it back to 150 and let's comment out the um okay, so let's just leave this one. This one looks a bit more appealing. All right, so I have some questions here that says, let me see. Okay, so Paul, he said, is there a way to add, let me see, is there a way to add the correction directly from the troubleshooting area? No, There's no way to add the correction directly from the troubleshooting area. So the only way you want to add, if you troubleshoot, so let's okay, so let's say within this, if you troubleshoot, right, maybe whatever you type and you see the effect, maybe padding, you press enter, maybe you save 40 pixels, press enter. So if this is what you want, right? So it's very simple. You just go to your code under the selector. So you know where we are working is where we have our universal selector here, right? So you just you just note it. You can copy it if you like. Just select it, put your cursor on it, and tap twice, and copy. But there's no need of copying since you already know padding. So you can equally just go and type it, right? So padding 40 pixels. Well, that's what you applied in the troubleshooting area to get what you wanted to get, right? So you could just go straight to your code where you have the so where is it? So this is where we have the universal selector. So you can just say padding 40 pixels, right? So with this, if you reload the page, it remains as it is. If you even close the troubleshooting just to still show you, it's definitely going to remain as it is, right? So because we've now added it to our code, what matters is actually what is in your code. It's not what is in the troubleshooting area, because at the end of the day, so it means that somebody can just open somebody's website, right? And just type some code in the browser, and it's going to update or affect the person's original code. So that's going to be a very big gap or loophole for for HTML. So so that's not possible. You can only type things here to troubleshoot, but immediately you reload, whatever you type here is gone. Yeah, so I think I've answered that question. Yeah. Okay, Daniel Okoli, let's hear from you. See, your hand is raised.
Yeah. So from what I saw, it's like we can inspect from our lifestyle cover, right? To get this troubleshooting.
Sorry, come again.
To get this troubleshooting interface, this troubleshooting dialog,
Yeah.
I think you have to inspect from our lifestyle, right?
Yeah, it's from the live server you get here. Let me close it. It's from, of course, we've been working. So from your your HTML file, you just open with live server, right? So it brings you here, and you're on your browser, right? So on your browser, this is your cursor. So you right click. When you right click, it's going to bring out this option. So you just click on inspect. That's the last option. Click. Then it brings you to this troubleshooting area. Is that
So that means what we are doing here, we can call it to the other side and go to reflect, right? But it will not affect the original code. But we can do some
Yeah.
changes to
Whatever you are
see
doing here does
how
not
it
affect the
applies
original
inside.
code. Yeah. Whatever you are doing here does not affect the original code. That's why I said whatever you do here, right? If you change a styling here, you want to add something. Okay. So in order to okay, we have something existing here. So you can
What I
add.
mean, apart from this one we are doing now, any other site, can we do the same thing? Like, whereby we try to see if we change one or two things, whether it's going to affect, although it's not our site, like in site that have been launched already.
Okay, a site that has been launched already.
This kind of
Okay. So let's, of course, we are here. So let's try it. Let's say repli.com. Okay, so let's inspect. All right, so this is what we have. So let's try to edit something, just playing around. Okay, so let's come here. Let's click here. Build software faster. So let's look for it. It has margin left auto, margin right auto. So we can come here and we can add our own. We can say padding top. Let's add padding top, right? So padding top. Maybe we want to say maybe 400 pixels, right? 400 pixels, enter. So you see, it has already shifted the website. You can see the padding top. It has given it a lot of space at the top
Okay.
for this build software faster. But it doesn't hold water because if you reload the page, what you typed here will just go away, right? So you can do it on any site, but it doesn't make any meaning. When you reload, everything just disappears. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So okay. So going back to our code, so overflow. Okay. So we are talking about padding. So yeah. So let's comment out this padding and just say padding left, right? Padding left, just so that you would see padding left maybe 30 pixels. Okay, so let me just let me reload. Okay, so let me take out the initial padding. So let's just have padding left only on the paragraph, the element with the ID of paragraph, 30 pixels. And this is it, right? We say padding left 30 pixels. So essentially, these 30 pixels at the top there. But it seems we have, what I'm seeing here is that I'm seeing a default styling for this top because this thing normally is supposed to be at the very top left. So one of the things we can do if there is any form of default styling, right? Normally you would see some developers come to this universal selector, and one of the things they say, what they do is they say box sizing. So they say border box. Because the browser by default adds some default styling or default spacing to our code or to our element. So we just want to say box sizing border box. Remember what box sizing border box does? It just makes it that your padding and your border, right? If you give an element a width of like 200 pixels, if you say box sizing border box, what you mean is that anything like padding or border that should contribute to the width or like that should add to the width of that content should be able to fall within the range of 200 pixels. The way a manner, the browser should subtract those extra spaces from the width of the content. It shouldn't be an extra spacing to the element, but it should be within. You've restricted it to whatever width it is. Let it remain that way, right? So when you say box sizing border box, that's what you mean. If you have padding, if you have border, all these things are extras. You want it to just be subtracted from the width of that container or of that content. So that's what box sizing border box. If you don't have box sizing border box, what's going to happen is that if you have an element, right, that has a width of 150 pixels. If you add a padding to it, it means that the width is going to increase by the dimensions of the padding. So for example, for this that you have width of 150 pixels, if you have padding of maybe 20 pixels, right? So it means that the true width of this paragraph box is not just 150. It's 150 plus 20 plus 20. Remember, this 20 pixels goes round. It goes round to say 20 pixels top, 20 pixels right, 20 pixels bottom, 20 pixels left. So you have left 20 pixels, right 20 pixels plus the width 150. So that's actually going to be 190. That's if you don't have border box sizing border box, you're actually going to have 190 as the width of this paragraph box. Let me just show you quickly. Let's inspect. So you can see 190 by 140. That's the width because we've added padding. So that padding contributes to the width. But if we say box sizing, border box, so you're actually going to see that the width of this element will remain 150. Let's look at it. So can you see 150 by 100? That is the initial dimension, 150 by 100. So come to our code. You can see it here, 150 width, 100 height. So that's what this box sizing border box does. So, so you can say padding 0, right? Margin 0. So what this means is that you are taking away every default styling or every default behavior of your browser on your web page. You just want your web page to appear as you are coding. You don't want anything to be added from anywhere, so that when you give 20 pixels, you'll be able to see that it is exactly 20 pixels. When you give 40, you see that it is 40. So you would see most developers do this. They come to the universal selector and they do this. Give box sizing of border box, padding 0, margin 0, right? Okay, so when that is done, if we remove all the paddings that we have here, remove this one. So we've removed everything padding and margin, we've removed it. We've only given universal padding 0 and margin 0. So let's check. So do you see that by default, your element will go to the top left? That's what happens. And of course, you can see everything just starts from the beginning of your browser, very beginning. So there's no extra styling from your browser at this point. We have disabled it. So it is at this point that we can now say, okay, so this is where our first paragraph is. Maybe we want to shift it a little bit to the right. So we can come to shift it, you can come to my first paragraph and just give it maybe 10 pixels of padding to the left. It's going to shift a little bit to the left. So, so this is it. So we can say, so padding left. So we can say 10 pixels. So you see it has shifted 10 pixels. So what if we gave a margin? It will equally still shift. Margin left. So what if we said margin left? Margin. So it still shifts, right? It will still shift. So, but just for you to understand what padding does and what margin does, but it's still going to shift. But you actually need to, there are times where you can use margin and padding interchangeably, but you essentially need to understand what a margin is and what a padding is. So what we are trying to say is that if on this first paragraph you have a border, right? So let's say you have a border on that first paragraph. So let's add a border to it. So border. So if you say border, maybe 2 pixels solid gray, for example. So this is what you see. This is what your margin will translate to. Your margin is going to come after your border, right? But when we did not have a border, you would normally think that you can replace margin with padding, right? But now that we have a border, you have now seen that the margin is after the border. So what if we give it a padding? Let's give it padding left. Padding left of still that 10 pixels. Okay, no, let's make it different so that 15, let's say 15 pixels. So you can see here that there's still space from the beginning of your browser to the border and from border to my first paragraph. So it's actually very important to understand. If you feel you can use it interchangeably, fine. But that is when you don't have a border. But if you now have a border, you need to have it in mind that margin is going to be beyond the border or outside the border, is going to take effect outside the border, and padding is going to take effect before the border. So I think that's a major point to note. All right. Okay, so there's also another way of writing your padding. So let's see. There's a shorthand. So instead of having, maybe you want to have padding rights, maybe so let's see. So let's say padding right. Maybe padding right, you want to say 20 pixels. Then padding left here, you want to say 15. Maybe you have different dimensions. Padding top, maybe you want to say 5 pixels. And padding bottom. Maybe you want to say I don't know, maybe 8 pixels. Right? So maybe this is what you have. Padding right, left, top, bottom. And of course, it's going to show here. So there's a shortcut for writing this. So if you have, instead of having these 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can just essentially have a single line padding. And you have, okay, so you can have like, let's see if you have, so maybe 20 pixels, 10 pixels. Okay, so let's check it out. Let's disable all of this. So when you have, if you have two values, right? If you have 2 values for padding, what does it mean? So what it means is that the first is for top and bottom, while the second one is left and right, right? So this is, let me just add something here to say top and bottom padding. So instead of, maybe if the top and bottom is 20 pixels, right? So instead of having padding top 20 pixels, padding bottom 20 pixels, then you now have padding left 10 pixels, padding right 10 pixels. You can just, this is a shorthand on one line, you just bring in the first one. The first parameter it signifies the padding top and padding bottom, while the second one signifies padding left and padding right. So you can still go further to have 4. Maybe you want to have the 4 padding. You can have the 4 to say, let's increment. Okay, let's start from 10, maybe 10 pixels to 20 pixels to 30 pixels to 40 pixels. So let's disable this one so that we don't have conflict. Okay, so copy this, just select and control. You still have this. Okay, so let's do this. Let's put this on a new line. Let's comment out this. All right. Okay. So if you have this padding 10 pixels, 20, 30, what does it mean? Okay, so you would see that 10 pixels goes for top. So look at it like a clock, right? A clock starting from top. So it moves clockwise. From top, it moves clockwise. So 10 pixels is for top, 20 pixels right, 30 pixels bottom, 40 pixels left. So just to let you know that you can actually have 4, you can have 4 values: top, right, bottom, and left. So let's put that and say, all right, so let's say top, right, bottom, left. So right, So that's for padding. You can do same for margin, right? So margin is essentially the same. So margin can take 4 values, right? So you can have margin, you can have margin. If you just want to make it top and bottom, you can say maybe like 30 pixels and maybe 10 pixels. So remember, it's going to act externally. So let's take out this margin left so that it will not impact our margin. So what we are saying here, margin 30 pixels and 10 pixels, is that 30 pixels top and bottom, 10 pixels left and right. So you can see, because we have this scroll, sorry, because we have this scroll, that's why it goes down. So, but you can see that 30 pixels, let's see, 30 pixels is the greatest one, or the greater one. So 30 pixels goes up. So you see from border to the edge of this, our box, is 30 pixels. If you come down again, from this border to the edge is 30 pixels. Then left from the beginning of this box to where it stops at this border is 10. The right is equally 10. So it's the same thing essentially. So this is still so let's do this, and so let's take it up. Okay, sorry about that. Let's take it up. Okay, so top and bottom, right? You can see that for margin and for padding. Then you can equally come here for your margin, and you want to make it top, right, bottom, left. Same thing. Maybe let's reverse it. Maybe 40 pixels, 40 pixels, 30 pixels, 20 pixels, 10 pixels. Right. So it's the same thing. You can see we started at 40. 40 is top, 30 is right. So you see it has squeezed this our box somehow. Below is 20 and left still remains 10. So that's that demonstration for margin and padding. All right. So we go into typography. We've done something around fonts family. Fonts family. We did that in the previous class, but just to bring it here again, so we can say font family. Choose any of the font families here, right? It's actually going to show this font. If we change the font here, we'll see a different type of font show fonts. So normally you would, if you would normally want to give that font to a universal selector here, so that it will apply the font all through your code. You will not have to be every block of code that you are styling. You have to determine, or you have to say font family, except you are building a site that maybe has different kind of typography, where in another place there's a different font style, sorry, font family, in another place, another font family, right? So if you are working with a website that has to do with maybe some different kind of arts, right? Arts, then you might need to define the font family for different blocks on that same web page. But if it's just a regular website, so you just choose one of them, right? So you can see if you choose this actually how it shows up. So font family, we actually have font style. Okay, we have font weights, right? So font weights, these are the values. You can make 100, 200, 500, 900. So font weight just really has to do with the thickness. So if you say font weight of 800, so let's see. So you can see even this paragraph now looks a bit bold, right? It wasn't bold before, but that's how it looks now. Because of the font weight. So if we make it 100, of course, you can see how thin it is. So that's what the font weight does. All right, so font weights, what else do we have about fonts? We can say font size. I think we've done a lot about font size, but let's just say font size. Font size is actually measured in pixels. So maybe 29 pixels. I don't know. 29 pixels. So you will see everything is going to just take the 29 pixels. Why? Because we are giving this font size to the universal selector. Don't forget, that's why everything takes up 29 pixels of fonts. So yeah. So fonts, yeah. So what else? Fonts style. So font style, we can make it italic. We can italicize, you know. So you would equally see. So you can just play around and see how it shows up. Okay, so we've also done a couple of stylings around text. Let me comment this out. So we've done some stylings around text, but let's still talk about that. Index3.html, let's just create let's create a paragraph with a dummy text. So remember, we use lorem to generate any number of text we wish. So let's just say lorem 150. We just need 150 words. So immediately you say lorem 150, you press enter. So I was supposed to press enter at the point where I typed it. So let's type it again, lorem 150, then press enter. So it's actually going to bring a paragraph of 150 words for you. Okay, so let's do some styling for this paragraph. Let's give it an ID of let's say maybe lorem. We can say lorem paragraph. Lorem paragraph. So we can copy that name and go to our external style sheets, and we say that's an ID. So we say hash the name curly brace, yeah. All right. So what do we want to do? We want to just do a couple of things. Let's say text align. Maybe we want to align. Maybe we want to justify. Okay, so let's justify and see. So if you see the text stretches from left to right, it takes in every possible space. So that's what text align justify does. So if you say center, it's actually going to, so it's center, you see what center does, So just, you can use text align and align your text anyhow you want to align it. Text transform, we've talked about this in our previous class, but let's say you want to make it uppercase. So you see everything goes uppercase, right? You want to make it lowercase, you can still do that here. Lowercase, everything goes lowercase. So line heights, let's talk about line heights. Line heights. I'm just showing you different stylings you can use for your text. So line height, you can say, so like maybe 30. So what does the line height do? It just gives space between 30 is actually it's too much. So let's reduce it. Let's say 10. So do you see the line height, what it does? It just gives line from, between different lines of text, right? So look at how much it spaces it. That's vertically, right? So line height, so instead of 10, let's make it 5. Let's still reduce it and see what happens. Right, so 5, it's coming closer. you make it 2. Okay. So it really depends on what you want. If you use Microsoft Word, you will see something, you will see an option for like line spacing. So this more like this works like that same option of line spacing. It just gives space between different lines of text. Okay, so so that's line heights. Letter spacing, there's letter spacing, maybe 15 pixels. So letter spacing is just going to give space. That's actually too much. So let's say 5. Let's say 5. Okay. So you see what letter spacing does. It gives space between, between each of the letters or each of the characters that you have here for this text. That's what letter spacing does. You can make it 2. Okay, so yeah, so that's letter spacing. Okay, so someone asked a question the last class and asked, can we add text shadow? Yeah, you can add text shadow if you want. Text shadow, right? So text shadow, maybe you want to say 2 pixels. So we have the vertical, 2 pixels, horizontal, then we have color. So you can say red, for example. So you can see, this is how the text shadow looks like. So it's going to give it a shadow, 2 pixels to the bottom, 2 pixels to the right. Then you now add a color to it. If this is what you want to achieve, just to show you. Okay, Daniel.
This reminds me, it appears as if you can actually write whatever it is you wish to write with CMS, with Visual Studio. Like, if can we write like an address to the top right corner, like an address now, so I can be aligned. Is it possible? Like, I'm just thinking because I can see center, I can see house. Is there anything like top left or top right, so that they align?
Okay.
You know what I get a picture.
Okay, yeah. I get what you mean. So like maybe you're writing a letter, it needs to have an address at the top right, then you now address the person
Yes,
to
yeah.
your left. Okay, so all right, so there are a couple of ways to achieve that. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so let's index 3. So let's just come up with a new paragraph and maybe want to say my address. Okay, so let's give an ID of address. Let's say, so let's go there to say hash address, open your curly brace. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so this is it at this bottom part here, my address. So let's say text align. So if we say end, so you can see text align end. It takes it to the far right. I think this is what you are asking.
Yes, something like this. Okay, my address may not be the same line with the next line. Let's say we write 3 lines and they are aligned, they are equally aligned to the left. Like, I don't know how to explain that.
Okay,
Like,
so
now the way you write.
yeah, I get your point. So this is what I guess this is what you mean. So you want to say my address Okay, so you want to say maybe another line, another paragraph tag, and you want to say, okay, so let's say maybe PO box, maybe 2340. Okay, then you have P, then you have like dates to say maybe 20th October, for example, 20th October, maybe 2024, for example. Okay, so we want all of this to be to the right. So what we can do is instead of giving ID, right? Since it's something we want to style, give the same style. So we can say div. We can put it in a div because we want to give the same styling to the three. So we just copy this to here, cut it, Control X, drop it here, Control V, right? So what we've done, let's align this. Let's align this with tab, just tab once. All right, so we have my address, we have PO box, we have this. So instead of this ID address, so we can just, sorry, we can take, okay, this text, we are working on text, right? So we can say, yeah, so let's take out this, let's take out this ID of address, right? And drop it for this div, that's the parent, because we want to style the parent to affect the children. We don't want to style these ones one by one. So let's say div ID, we've given an ID of address. So let's come to our let's come to our style sheets where we had address. So if you can see, automatically everything goes to the right. Daniel, confirm to me that this is what you're talking about.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, it goes to the right. So can the P stand under the M while the 20 stand under the P? Is it possible that way?
You say can the what?
Can the P be directly under the M and the 20
Okay,
directly under
okay,
the
for the
P?
P to be directly under the M.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so it's possible. You can add, if that's what you want to achieve, for the P to be directly under the M, there are a lot of options. You can reduce the font. If you reduce the font of P, but I'm not sure that's what you want to achieve. But if you reduce the font, it's actually going to make it smaller and go under. Alternatively, you can look at the letter spacing. If you work on the letter spacing, it might reduce it. Okay, so as we are talking, let me be typing
And
it.
maybe
So we'll just be
if you put space after the address, like I don't know if you can do some adjust. Is it possible to do adjustment for each paragraph so that it should? I'm just thinking if that is the solution to it. Like after my address, put space so that the number of space equals the number of character in the PO box 234, and if the PO box 234 is not equal to the 20th space, you have enough space so that after everything we have the same number of character. I don't know if that's
okay. So
the solution.
yeah, so like I said, there are a couple of ways you can do it. If this is the longest, this 20th October 2024 is the longest, right? And we want everything to be on the same line, right? From the top. We've already said text align should be end, and everything has come to the end. So we can use padding. We can use padding on each of these to shift it and make it align at where you have 20th. But now you will have to target each of them individually to say, let's give them an ID. So let's say an ID. let's say ID of address paragraph, right? So this one is ID. We can just say ID PO box, just PO box, PO box. So let's take this guy, address paragraph, come here. So hash, command V. Okay, so address underscore paragraph. Okay, so this, then we can now give it padding, right? So we can say padding right. So we can give it padding right, and we can say padding right should be 10 pixels. So essentially, when you give that padding right, you go to C. Okay, so you just shift it a little bit. You can increase it maybe 50. So you just use padding, right? You use padding, shift it to where you want. Just make with your padding, you're able to just maybe shift it. Yeah, but there's something called CSS, sorry, responsive design. We are still going to go into responsive design, because in responsive design we have things like CSS Flexbox and CSS Grid. You are going to see how with CSS Flexbox and CSS Grid, we are going to be able to style these things very easily, right? Without having to do all of this. Or another way, yeah. So with that CSS Flexbox and Grid, we're actually going to, you see how easy. So we wouldn't have to target each of these elements one after the other, you know. Yeah. So we can use padding. Alternatively, another thing I'm looking at here is that we can, since this is the box, this address is the box, right? That we have said text align should be end. We could also say, okay, so all the text within it has gone to the end. So let's check out something. So let's say background color. I want to see that box. Background color, let's say blue. I want to see the extent of that. Okay, so you can see this is the background, or this is the element, right? It spans from far left to the far right. So another thing you can do is, if you're able to make this box to start from here, reduce the width. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so let's say width is let's say width 100 pixels. Let's see. So you see automatically, it's because every element is actually going to start from left and go to the right. So if you want to push this box to the far right, there are a lot of, for me, I just call it more like mechanical ways to push it. You can use margin and push it. You can use padding to push it. But that would not be, it may not be responsive enough. Don't worry, when we go into responsive web design, you actually understand what I mean, or the implications of just using padding to push an element, or using margin to
Okay.
just push, maybe because you want to achieve one element going to the extreme, or one element being at the middle. I'm still going to show you best practices, but if we are going to be very mechanical, so let's say this 200 pixels. Let's see. So with this, so we have this. So the next thing would be, okay. So the next thing would be, so instead of even saying text align to be end, we can still make it text aligned. It can start from the very beginning. At this point, we can remove the text align. We can comment it out. So when we comment it out, everything, has the same line, lines up my address, PO Box 28. So next, we can now figure out how to push this box from where it is currently to the far right. So Another thing we can do is to further reduce the space, right? We can further reduce the space from 2024 to the end, just so that we have a perfect box. So we can say width, instead of 200 pixels, we can say maybe 180. Let's see, 180. Okay, so let's further reduce to like 150. Okay, so that's too much. So let's say 170. Okay, maybe around 160 or so. We should be able to get. Okay, so we've gotten a perfect box, right, with everything aligned. So next thing is, how do we push it from here? You can use margin, but it's really not best practice, right? You can use margin. Remember, margin is the space outside it. So you can say margin, but that's really a wrong practice. Margin left is so you see the large value you give to it in order to move. You can give it 700 pixels. Okay, 700 pixels. So you see, it has now made our
Wow.
page. It has now made our page is going from left to right. Right. So that's not what we want to achieve. But let's see if we make it 500 pixels. Let's see. Okay, so let's make it 6. Okay, so we can make it 650. Okay, so this, it fits perfectly to the page, but I'm still letting you know that this is not best practice. When we get to responsive web design, you will get to know what. So why are we saying this is because if you inspect, right, um, so let's zoom back a bit. All right. So you can see here, each of these tabs here represents how your website is going to show on each of these screens. You see, so it tells you how your website will behave. So for a screen that's, look at it, mobile. If you can see my cursor, you see mobile here. So it means that if somebody opens this your website on his phone or on her phone, this is how your website will look like, very ugly. I'm not sure anybody wants this. And look at, the person will have to scroll to the right in order to see your address, right? So now if you want to now do responsiveness is just making your website to look appealing for all screen sizes, for mobile, for tablets, for laptop, whatever. Each of them have different screen sizes. So it's not automatic that when you just open a website, it automatically fit into your phone if you're using a mobile. So it's actually done with code. You have to code it to say this particular element is here, but that's on laptop. But when a user opens it on phone, I need it to shrink down. I need it to be slim. So one of the ways you can, or one of the elements that it's is most commonly or that you most commonly see the example with is hamburger hamburger menu. Websites that will have um they will have three what, a hamburger, right? A hamburger icon. Okay, so let me open a website for you just in a moment. So Ben Smart Tech, bensmarttech.com. Okay, so I actually built this site, bensmarttech.com. So I just want to show you. So you can see that on this site you have home, about, services, projects, contact, right? So but now if you inspect, let's inspect. Let me show you. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. This hamburger, right? These 3 lines to the right is actually called hamburger menu. So when you click on it, do you see? It brings out home, about, services, projects, that same menu that was on the bigger screen. right? So we've been able to, or I actually made it to appear this way on a phone. So if you use phone to open bensmarttech.com, this is exactly what you're going to see, right? So you can see how it looks like on different screen sizes. All these things are not automatic. You have to code it, right? You have to code it. So yeah, so just to demonstrate. Yeah, all right. So that's why I said this is not best practice. When you say margin, so it means that when you now want to code for a mobile screen size, you need to now reduce the margin and say maybe margin 100 pixels in order for it to, become smaller. But if you use responsive web design, if you use CSS Flexbox, immediately the user just makes it mobile. It will just automatically shrink. It will automatically shrink. I'm going to demonstrate that when we get there, right? Yeah, so okay. So we just have few minutes. So in these few minutes, what can we do? Let's look at colors and backgrounds. Yeah, so colors and background. Let's look at colors and backgrounds. So I think we'll do that here under this background color so that we don't have to create something new. So just to let you know that there are different ways that you can apply this blue, because you might see this on other people's code or other people's CSS file, and maybe you're wondering, what is this? What does this do? So for background color, you can either make it blue, just type the word as it is, blue. Another way you can do is, instead of blue, you can say background color. So you can use RGB, then brackets, then from there. So RGB just stands for red, green, and blue. So you just put, it depends on what you want. Maybe the colors actually range from 0 to 255, right? So if you say, so we want to achieve blue, so we can say 0, comma, 0, comma, 255. So with this, you are going to have a blue, right? So let's check it out. So it's blue. So if we want to have red, just pure red, so we say 255, 0, and 0. That's pure red. 25500. Just to, yeah. So it gives you pure red. So you can use this to, maneuver anything you want, maybe 255, 45, and 0. You see how it looks like. You can add something here, 244, So it's more like you just play around with the colors, right? You can even go online to see the RGB colors for whatever you want, whatever, you can go get a color palette online so that you see, so you can say RGB color palette, right? So that you will just get the colors, or maybe color picker. You can come to W3 schools to use their color picker. So yeah, so you are going to see the values, right? For each of these, you can come here to say maybe RGB, or maybe if you click on a color here, yeah. So if you click on a particular color, it will tell you the RGB value, that the RGB is 51, 204, 255. You click on something red, it tells you RGB is 2550 and 102. So, a lot of color palettes are available online. So you can click on them depending on whatever color you want to give to your styling. So, but that's just to let you know you can use RGB. There's another one, background color. So there's also RGBA. So R stands for red, G stands for green, B stands for blue, A stands for alpha. So that alpha actually brings in transparency, right? It ranges from 0 to 1. So I can just put it in a comment here and say, okay, so let's do that. Let's do that. So R, comma, G and B ranges from 0 to 255, right? While alpha A from ranges from 0 to 1. While A, so let me just put quotation mark there. While A ranges from 0 to 1, actually. So here you can have, so this same color we had, 255, 45, 244. So we can have that same color, 255, 45, 244. Then A, so we can say, I will show you, if we say 0. Let's say 0.5. So let's check 0.5 of this color. This is how 0.5 looks like, right? That's just the level of transparency. So if we say 1, if we make it 1, so you see 1. It's just like maybe you are adding white. If you've worked with colors and maybe you have a blue color and you decide to add white, as you keep adding white, you see that color will start, having different shade. Or maybe you add black to blue, you will see that it will begin to have different shades. So this really has to do with transparency, right? So if you add maybe 0.2, you will see how light it is. So you can play around, right? Play around with it. Yeah, so with that, let's comment that out. Just want to show you. So after RGBA, we could equally have background color. So we could have HSL. HSL is another way to measure your, to add color to your style. So H stands for hue, right? So let's see. So H represents hue. S represents saturation. L represents lightness, right? Lightness. So that's hue, saturation, lightness. And H is actually the hue is from 0. It ranges from 0 to 360. 0 to 360. S represents saturation, it ranges from 0 to 100%. So this one uses percentage. Okay. Then L represents lightness, and it equally 0. You actually have 0 to 100%. That's the range. Okay. So for 0 to 360, of course, 0 is for red, Then I think around 120. 120 is for green. Then 240 upward, red, green, blue is for blue. So under this HSL, so let's have maybe 0 for red, and the saturation. Okay, so let's say maybe 20%. Then the lightness, maybe 80%. So let's see. So you can see how it looks like. It just gives you another shade, right? Gives you another shade. So you just play around with it. So if you say 120, I said 120 is for green. Let's check it out. So you see, it's actually a shade of green because we've added saturation and lightness. So lightness just has to do with either it is very light or it is dark. Yeah, so you can add you can make it 240. 240 has to do with 240 has to do with blue. So it's actually because of the shade. If we say saturation, maybe 100%, let's give 100% saturation. And for the lightness, let's just say maybe 0% light. This is how it's going to look. Or let's say 100%. So whatever, you just play with it, right? This is CSS, just to let you know, there's HSL, then there's actually hex, hex, hexadecimal color. All of this you would see, there is hex code. So you have something like background color, and you see this is the format ash, and FF. So this is white, right? So this is how it is written. It starts with an ash. After the ash is you have two. FF represents red. The second FF green, third FF, or like more like the first two values, right? Like red, green, and blue. 2 2. There's also a shorthand. Shorthand is you can have FFF instead of double. You can have single. So, but usually it's best to write it full, six characters. So you can see FFF is white, so you see nothing there. If you say 000, 000 is black. So it starts from 00, it starts from FFF to 000, right? So FFF is white, 000 is black. Or you can make it 6 zeros, right? 0 is 6. So from this color, if you click here and come here, if you choose any other color, you equally see the hex code for that color. So let's say maybe a color, this kind of color, right? So if you click on it, you will see the hex color. So you see this one is ACC7B2, right? So just to let you know that there are different ways of, representing the colors. And so I think we'll stop here, right? Okay, so just a minute.